It's Wednesday, and the Mariners dropped 2 out of 3 to the Boston Red Sox. But we do have former Mariner, Big Maple, who started for the second game, the one game the Mariners won.
That guy, by the way, had an eagle land on him.
Very cool. I always root for James Paxton, except when he's playing against the Mariners. James Paxton was recently traded from the Dodgers to the Red Sox and got his first start for the Red Sox against the Mariners. He actually looked pretty good for the first couple of innings before the Mariners got to him. Then they moved on to win that game 10-6. So, but that's the only game they've won in the last three. So, hopefully, that's not a trend we're going to see for the rest of the season. Which brings me to the question that I have for you guys to start off with: did the Mariners do enough at the trade deadline?
We have to remember that since they traded for Arozarena, they've scored 41 runs in 6 games. Our pitching, we gave up 14 runs against the Red Sox in the first game, but we scored 7. The next night, we scored 10, they scored 6. Tonight, 3-2. The thing is the Mariners are starting to hit the ball. Our pitching can't be elite every single night. Like, that's just, there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. But I think we did. We grabbed Justin Turner, a player that's going to be a veteran presence in the clubhouse. He's going to be able to mentor every single one of our young players. Arozarena, everything like that. They're hitting the ball. You know, Julio's going to look up to him as a leader. It's almost like Carlos Santana, but a better version of it, in my opinion. He's more productive of that, and he's going to make everyone on our team better. And I think that grabbing Arozarena just solidified our outfield for years to come. Robles is still hot. We have Julio about to come back. We have Arozarena, and he's still, he's playing well. The morale boost. Even though some of the runs were against the White Sox, and we all agree the White Sox are the White Sox, but they kept it up against the Red Sox. And they scored 18 runs in 3 games. They averaged 6 runs per game against the Red Sox. They're deemed one of the better pitching staffs in all of baseball. And we played at home against them. Our pitching staff gave up more runs than what we're used to. Gilbert had a bad start. How many times this year has Gilbert given up 7 runs? And I think a lot of that was due to a bad call, third strike, that led to a whole bunch of runs being scored. But that's beside the point. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from our offense. And if our pitching continues the way that it was in the first half, because it was kind of abnormal, giving up 14 runs one game, giving up 6 runs the other night. They played better today, but I really think that they did enough to get us to the playoffs, and nobody's going to want to face Gilbert, Castillo, and Kirby in back-to-back nights, because that's going to be our playoff rotation. And then we picked up Yimi Garcias, we picked up Chargois, or however you say his name. Our bullpen's gotten better. Santos is starting to, he's going to be healthy at some point. He's elite. Our team is trending upward. And I think that we did enough to get to the playoffs. And if our pitching staff can be elite in the playoffs and we can utilize and keep our bats going like they have been, with JP coming back, Julio coming back, I think we could make a run.
Okay, so I think getting Randy Arozarena makes it almost like automatically for me gives this whole trade process or the whole trade deadline in A for the Mariners just from him alone. The part that I struggle with is first base. Like, we got rid of Ty France, and then it just seemed like we didn't really have a plan for that situation. It seemed to get to this point where we ended up, I mean, you could say Tucker is that placement, which it seems like he's going to play there some, but it didn't seem like he was like our for sure choice. It's almost like they made the decision to move on from France without having that precise like player that they had in mind that they knew that they would get, which makes me start to think that they had intentions of grabbing Vladdy, and then obviously that didn't work out. I mean, I would have been more frustrated had another team came in and picked up Vladdy, because it would have shown that we could have done something to get him. But the fact that he didn't go to anybody kind of just shows that, he wasn't, we didn't really have a chance with him. But as far as picking up Garcia, love that. I mean, in the 3 outings that I've seen him play in, he's done way better than I expected. Honestly, I didn't know much about him, but I did know that he was the best available reliever at the time. So overall, I got to give it an A.
If you go through the trades, it really did look. I agree with you, Af. I think that it looked like they were trying to get a first baseman. I think they were probably talking to the Rays about Yandy Diaz. They were probably talking to the Blue Jays about Vladdy. And then when none of that panned out, I think that's when they got Justin Turner. Looking at the trades that they've gone through, Randy Arozarena, they got him for Brody Hopkins and Aiden Smith, both down in Modesto at this time, or were down in Modesto when they were traded. Brody Hopkins had a 2.9 ERA. Aiden Smith, 2.84 batting average, 9 home runs in Modesto. Not bad prospects, but not the Mariners' top prospects. So really not much to give up at this point. 2 single-A players who may amount to a lot, but we probably won't know for a couple of years if they're going to amount to anything or not for Arozarena. For Yimi Garcia, the one Mariners prospect that I think everybody would know because he's been in the major leagues this year, Jonathan Clase, that they gave up him for Yimi Garcia, along with a single-A catcher, Jacob Sharp. Clase, as much as I like him, his speed seems to be game-changing at times, but his batting average was only about 195 when he was in the majors. So hopefully he goes on to have a great career, but it doesn't feel like a huge check to pay to get good relief pitching. Yimi Garcia came into the Mariners with a 2.61 ERA for the season, so automatically becomes like the setup. Goes into a setup role for Andres Munoz, which, given the injury concerns that Gregory Santos has had, he actually had an injury again today. Given those injury concerns, I think getting a relief pitcher was a good thing. Then you go through the other trades that the Mariners did. They picked up JT Chargois, who used to be a Mariner back in 2021. For him, they gave up just a pitching prospect, unranked pitching prospect. Then you've got the Ty France trade that, even though they designated Ty for assignment, they traded him to the Rays for Andrew Salcedo, who appears to be a single-A catcher at this point. I think that trade was really to get Ty France somewhere else. I wish Ty the best. I think he'll probably go on to have a great rest of his season, maybe even be an all-star again next year once he gets a new change of scenery, because Ty France can hit the ball. He just wasn't doing it here. But in that trade, they picked up Andrew Salcedo, who, as far as I can tell, he appears to be a replacement for Jacob Sharp in single-A Modesto. At catcher, I don't think he's going to be in the pros anytime soon, but I think that trade was more to get Ty France off the books and get him somewhere else. Again, Ty France, maybe he turns his season around for the Reds. Rooting for him, he's a good guy. So then you look at the other trades they did. They got rid of Ryne Stanek, picked up Ryland Thomas, who's currently hitting 264 in 74 minor league games this year. Outfielder, replenishes the outfield. And they really didn't give up much of anything else. The other trade they did, picking up Justin Turner, they gave up outfielder R.J. Schreck, who's currently the number 29 prospect in the Mariners organization. So not giving up much. If you look at Turner's stats and set them side by side with Ty France's stats, he's pretty much better all down the board. 39-year-old first baseman, I don't know how reliable that'll be. He's been reliable most of his career. So good pickup. First at bat as a Mariner, he picked up an RBI this week, so that was encouraging. So overall, I think you're right, Af. I think this is an A. I don't think the Mariners could have done much better. I would have loved it if they could have picked up a Yandy Diaz or a Vladimir Guerrero, but I honestly don't think that those players are actually on the market as much as everybody was saying they were.
I was happy with the Garcia trade, but I felt like we needed that already. With Gregory Santos going out today, it almost seems like we're behind a reliever now, and relievers got kind of worrying me heading towards the playoffs.
It makes picking up JT Chargois a much better deal than it first sounded. He was injured for some of the season, but he's actually got a 1.62 ERA in 15 games so far this year. So he came back from an injury earlier in the season, but has been pretty good since then. So hopefully the additions will iron out the bullpen. I mean, we all thought at the beginning of the season Matt Brash and Andres Munoz were going to be the two that were going to get him through. Matt Brash went down early. Andres Munoz had his issues with his back, I believe, during the season, but has been a really good closer, all-star closer. And we've been waiting for Gregory Santos to come back, but he just seems to keep getting hurt. So I agree. I'm nervous about Santos because I think he's going to be great once he gets healthy, but he can't seem to stay healthy.
What did you think of the trade or getting rid of Stanek?
I thought that Stanek was one of those players that he was hit or miss. I thought he was one of those guys that you were either going to get the guy that was going to be lights out or he was going to give up runs. And I don't think that we could count on him when the playoffs came around. And I think by picking up Yimi Garcia and JT Chargos, I'm going to mispronounce that name all night, you got rid of somebody that you felt you couldn't rely on. You expected him to come in this year and be that like kind of backup guy. But because of the Santos injury and the Brash injury, he got kind of thrust towards the front. He got thrust towards a position where the Mariners were expecting him to perform in night in and night out. And at this point in his career, he has good games and he has bad games. And when you get to the playoffs, he's not going to be consistent enough in order to make, us feel comfortable. If I saw him come out in the 8th inning in the playoffs, I would literally be holding my breath because I'm like, are we getting the version where he's going to be lights out? Or are we getting the version where he's going to blow the game?
Right.
And I think that getting rid of him for what we did and the moves we made makes us feel more comfortable going into bringing a reliever in the playoffs where we can count on them to not blow the game. Because you're either going to get lights out or he's going to blow the game. The people we have now, they're going to be consistent. They're going to, we can rely on them more. I think everyone here would agree our starting pitching staff is great. We reach the playoffs, go Castillo, Gilbert, and Kirby in back-to-back nights. Nobody wants to face that in a 5-game series. Nobody does. But our bullpen got better, where we can rely on them to come in. And then when we reach the playoffs, we're going to have Bryce Miller coming out of the bullpen. We're going to have Brian Wu coming out of the bullpen because they're not going to be starting. No. So I think that right now, the Mariners, more than anybody else, have positioned themselves to where if we can get to the playoffs and score some runs, nobody's going to want to face them. And I think that we provided more stability than we had before. And I think that's the biggest thing about all of this is we're not going to have the ups and downs of Stanek with Yimi Garcia or whatever his name is, and JT Chargos.
I think Stanek has really good stuff, but he's been really unreliable for the last month or so. So moving on from Stanek was, I think, necessary because he played a large role in the Mariners losing the 10-game lead that they had. There were several opportunities that he had, or he could have come and been a stopper, and he just didn't. For whatever reason, because he does have really good stuff. But any heartburn that I had with them trading him really got a dose of Tums when I saw what happened in his first game with the Mets. He got shelled. So no way around it. He kept up the same thing he's been doing for the Mariners lately and got hit hard. So I wish him the best. I think the Mariners were smart to move on from him. Picked up a couple of relief pitchers. I hope that Gregory Santos can stop getting injured. It seems like every time he goes out there, there's a risk he's going to get pulled out with an injury right now. But if he could get healthy and stay healthy, along with the players they picked up, Yimi Garcia, then you got Andres Munoz, and you've got some other pretty good relievers really good relievers in our bullpen. I think they do have one of the best rotations in bullpens in baseball.
Something that I've been kind of frustrated with, especially after today's game, was watching Mitch Garver play. It's getting to the point where I'm like, kind of just don't even want to see him out there. How do you guys feel about him and his performance so far?
I have been disappointed with that move from the very beginning. I felt like he was one of those players that could never stay healthy, never provide consistency or anything like that. And I thought it was we overpaid him and everything else. As a backup catcher to Cal to provide relief, because you got to have a backup catcher. You can't catch every game. You can't expect a catcher to catch 162 games. But to expect him to come in as DH or something like that, I think was too much to ask. I don't think he's that type of player. And I think that he is the person on our team with these moves will see less playing time. And I think that picking up somebody like Turner, let's say first base, when JP comes back, right? Dylan Moore can play first base. Luke Raley can play first base. Tyler Locklear's up there, can play first base. Play the hot bat. Play who's ever hitting and has the best matchup. And I think that the moves that we made provide us the opportunity, once we get healthy, to not play Mitch. And I think that's what the Mariners wanted to do, because Polanco's come around. He's looking good at second base. Okay? Rojas, best defensive third baseman the last time I checked, and basically all of baseball. And he is one of those feisty players. I just really like him. He doesn't put up the best stats, but he's consistent. He's playing hard. He plays good defense. And I think he's good enough to where the Mariners can rely on him to a certain extent, as long as he's not somebody that we expect to be a superstar. But when we get healthy, I expect Mitch Garver to be nothing more than a backup catcher like what Tom Murphy was previously. And I think that Mitch Garver falls by the wayside. He doesn't play very much, and he's nothing more than a backup catcher once everyone gets healthy.
I don't see the Mariners cutting him or doing anything like that, but he's hitting, 160 something right now? So that's not even close to the Mendoza line. Usually when I was growing up, it was always, if you're a great fielder, you hit 200, that's the Mendoza line. That's what can keep you in the pros. If you're hitting 160, that's well below. But he does have a track record with Texas of having spurts where he's really, really good. So I think the Mariners will keep him around. I think he'll be a backup catcher. He might get some time in. Hopefully Cal doesn't get hurt. But your comment about the other Mitch Haniger, potentially getting hot. Hanny hasn't got hot all season. I mean, maybe at the start of the season he was a little bit warm first starting off, but he hasn't been hot either. So I think potentially once Julio comes back, assuming Victor Robles' hip flexor is not going to give him too much problems, you're going to see an outfield of Arozarena, Julio, and Victor Robles, and you're going to have potentially Luke Raley at first and Justin Turner at designated hitter. I think that's probably the best lineup the Mariners can have. And Hanny and the Mitch which are going to be probably on the bench quite a bit more going forward after these trades.
So Victor Robles, you guys bring him up. I find it very interesting because I was looking at his stats before he got to the Mariners, and this guy was hitting like 180 before he got here. And then all of a sudden he gets here, and I'm not kidding, like this guy seems like the hottest bat in baseball right now. What do you think helped with that? Was that the transition, like a new team? Where do you think that came from?
Robles was a top 6 prospect in all of baseball at one point. He has never been able to find his footing anywhere, right? He has struggled, and he's still somewhat young. And certain players thrived in T-Mobile Park. Like Ichiro, he thrived there because he wasn't necessarily this great power hitter or something like that. He was more of a contact place hitter. And I think that Robles benefits from, because the outfield's really big in Seattle, right? It's something where hitting home runs and everything, like there's a lot of space to cover. And that's why it's a pitcher-friendly ballpark and not necessarily a hitter-friendly in today's game.
Right.
And I think that Victor Robles coming in, getting a fresh opportunity to come in, get a fresh start as a younger type player. He used to be a top prospect, and I think his style of play just fits T-Mobile Park. I think that's more of it than anything else because it's about finding the right players for the field that you have. If you have a short fence, power hitters are going to do great. They're not going to fly out. If you have a long fence, power hitters are not going to hit as many home runs. And I think that his style of play transitioned to T-Mobile Park greatly. And I think that he's benefiting from it. And I also think that everywhere else he's been expected to do great things. He came in with no expectations, and now he's being able to thrive.
The one caution that I would give for Victor Robles is he does appear that he's finally putting it together, but it's 1 month. 1 month in July. I hesitate to say this is the player we're going to have in the future. He's going to hit 400 for the rest of the year. I doubt it. I don't think he's Ted Williams. That being said, what a great surprise, right? So if he can even hit 300 for the rest of the season, he'll be one of the best hitters on the team, if not the best hitter on the team.
I wanted to touch on one last thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Which is, if Victor Robles doesn't pan out, we still have so many outfield prospects because we got a couple years of club control of Arozarena. We have Julio locked up for 10 plus years. Then we have Montez down in the minors, and we also have Farmello that people tend to forget about that we drafted and who's been doing great things. So I think that if Robles can stay hot through the end of the year, if he turns out to be great, that's awesome. But I also think that he gets replaced by Montez some way mid through next year, no matter how great he is. So we have after the Arozarena trade, we have a surplus of outfielders. And if he can stay hot, I think it will help us this year, but I still don't think he's the long-term solution. And I just think that the Mariners are really set up going forward with our farm system because most of our top prospects are hitters to not necessarily make a big trade now. I think we did enough this year in order to compete. But going forward, we are going to be elite when it comes to hitting.
I think that's a difficult thing for most Mariners fans to hear because since about 1995, 2001 maybe, the Mariners haven't been elite at hitting. So the thought that the prospects are all going to pan out and that the Mariners are going to be elite, it's a great thought, but I think the Mariners fans in general are cautious about that and hesitant to even be optimistic about it. But it is true. The Mariners do have a bunch of prospects right now coming up. How many of them actually pan out to be as great as they should? They're saying, is Cole Young going to be as good as he's supposed to be? Is Colt Emerson going to be as good as everybody's saying he's going to be? Felton Celestin, is he going to be the next great international player that comes up? It's all questions when we're dealing with prospects, which is why right now it's good that the Mariners have picked up a couple of proven players to going forward because you can't just rely on prospects. Wouldn't it be great if the Mariners made a run this year, right? You always hear, next year's the year the Mariners are going to make a run. They're planning for next year, 54%. Let's make it this year. That would be great. And I think right now they're set up for what's going to be a hold your breath down to the wire division race. So could be exciting for the next couple months.
What have you learned about your team with the pads on the last 2 days that maybe you didn't know in OTA minicamp in the first few days?
I think we're still learning who we are. I think we're still chasing that. I think the guys are bought in. It's great tape to coach off of. It's great tape to eval guys on, but we're I wouldn't say far away, but we're a ways out right now. But we have plenty. We have time to do it. We just gotta make sure we take advantage of each day.
All right, so the question was, how does he feel about where his team's at right now? And it sounds like he's kind of saying that they have a ways to go. How do you guys take that?
I think the offense is as I've said before, the offense is gonna roll with Grubb as the offensive coordinator. Wide receivers are particularly doing well from everything I see from training camp. This week I saw that Jake Bobo made an athletic layout catch, and then the next day or shortly thereafter, DK goes up and gets a one-handed catch. So you can see why the offense is winning the day, because the wide receivers are just really good and really making efforts. With regard to, I think any head coach 2 weeks into training camp or where they're at right now is going to say that they've got a ways to go. They're not going to say we're ready to win the Super Bowl at that point. So I really don't put a lot of stock in that. I think it's more of a very diplomatic coach answer than anything.
The most telling aspect of the interview is we hire a defensive-minded head coach who's supposed to be a mastermind on the defense. We know we have this offensive talent, but for Grubb to be putting things together against a Mike Mcdonald-led defense, I know things are still early, and say the offense won the day. I think our defense is just as talented as our offense right now. With our corners, we have Witherspoon, Woolen, all of them, right? And for them to go out and say that Grubb is putting together an offense that is competing with a Mike Mcdonald defense, even though things are still early and they got to figure things out and everything like that, I think it's very telling about how good Grubb is going to be as our offensive coordinator. I think that our offense is taking step forwards just like our defense. And I think that's the most telling aspect of it. Yes, he gave the political answer. We still got a lot of ways to go. Every coach is going to say that during training camp because they don't want their players to become complacent. But the fact that the offense won the day when we hired a defensive-minded head coach, I think says a lot when we have a first-time offensive coordinator, even with all the offensive talent that we have.
I just heard an interview with Jaron Reed, and he even said himself, the way that these training camps are set up this early on without pads, it's meant for the offenses to win. It doesn't favor the defenses at all. And so it's not going to be just the Seahawks that are going to feel that way. It's going to be every team. And so that's the only thing I would say to that. But does it give me hope that our offense is rolling? Yeah, sure. But at the same time, I wasn't worried about our offense. I'm more worried about our defense and the youth that we have at defense. And I want to see how Tariq Woolen and Witherspoon adjust to this defensive scheme. I mean, Pete always had that kick step move for his defensive backs, and now they're probably learning a completely different move. And so it'd be interesting to see how they adjust to the new system.
The ball, I'm curious how you're going to utilize that in your decision making, especially on things like fourth down.
Good data is good data, and you want to be able to let that drive a lot of your decisions. But there is a human element as well in real time, and those will drive kind of how we game plan throughout the week, how we communicate, how the players expect us to call things. But we do want to be aggressive, so we do have. But in order to do that, you have to be good at those situations. So we need to be a good short yardage team. We need to be able to move people off the ball. We need to be able to operate. And, so those are things that you're going to, consider in those situations.
The question was, are you going to use analytics, and what role will analytics play in your decision making? I really take that answer from Coach McDonald to be, why are you asking me that question? Was essentially what he was trying to say there. But it is interesting. I heard an interview where Tyler Lockett was talking about moving the chains, and how in past seasons sometimes they've been chasing the chains. They were just trying to get the first down, and how this training camp is different, and it seems like Grubb is still moving the ball, still trying to get the first down, but really going for the throw. It was the ESPN 7:10 a.m. radio they were talking about the other morning, where they said that McDonald's philosophy on offense is going to be start fast, end fast, and we're not going to be talking about winning in the fourth quarter. It's going to be winning the whole game, and that's a take on it. So
that's refreshing.
I really think that answer was, don't ask me that question, is what he was really thinking. The thought of analytics playing into it. Hopefully he doesn't have to make too many choices on fourth down, but certainly the players, Tyler Lockett, I think, has suggested that there's a difference in the offense. I mean, we all love the videos of Pete Carroll going, can you win in the first quarter? Can you win in the second quarter? Can you win in the third quarter? Can you win in the fourth quarter? Yeah. Ultimately, it would be really nice to have a Seahawks team that starts strong and ends strong. for the whole game. That's been the issue with the Seahawks for years. So hopefully that's what ultimately is going to happen. I don't think that this interview is actually saying that, but other interviews I've heard this week have said that seems to be the way they're going.
As a Seahawks fan, I've been disappointed for years because it always felt like the first half, the offense never did anything. And it was always a second half comeback. They'd keep it close, and we couldn't move the ball. We couldn't do anything in the first half. Yes, they're going to look at analytics and everything like that. But I think that Joe made a very good point where this year they're going to be like, we want to score from the beginning of the game throughout the whole game. Where I felt like we always played so conservatively during the first half. Like our offensive, like our theory of how to run an offense has changed. And that's going to be new with a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator and everything like that. But it was so frustrating to watch the Seahawks every single game not do anything in the first half. And then the second half would roll around. They'd do somewhat. Fourth quarter, it felt like they opened up the offense because they had to. It sounds like now they're finally going to open it up, and we're going to be like, we're going to score in the first quarter. We're going to score in the second. We're going to score in the third. We're going to score in the fourth. Whereas before, there was always just this feeling that, like, the Seahawks couldn't get anything going until the second half. And I'm really excited about that. And I think that, analytics and everything like that play a big role. But I think that the biggest role and the biggest thing the Seahawks could do in order to be better is to attack from the beginning of the game. Not be in a position where they're having to come back. Not be in a position in the second half where now they're opening it up. Now they're finally going to play offense.
I've kind of got the hot take on this one. I'm not a fan of analytics. I don't want to turn into the Seattle Mariners when it comes to play calling and stuff like that. For me, analytics, it's like, why am I hiring a head coach if I'm just going to have a piece of paper tell me what I should do here? Like, I really think analytics are great for terrible coaches because it helps them out. It's almost like a cheat sheet. But as far as the guy I want making the decisions in the moment, where the analytics can't always line up, I'll take the coach, especially somebody like Mcdonald or even Ryan Grubb in those situations. I want to see them earn their paychecks.
Byron Murphy and Christian Haynes the last 2 days, we've kind of seen that in almost as good. We actually saw Haynes with the ones a lot today too.
Yeah, well, Lincoln had a vet day, so that was a little bit with Christian with the ones. But yeah, both guys are having a good camp. They're putting them to the test. We're putting them through the fire right now, but they're responding.
Byron Murphy, like, in this training camp, there was a video that was posted or something like that. Like, he got through freely. He destroyed the offensive lineman that was in front of him and had a free shot at the quarterback. And if we can have Byron Murphy keep doing that, I think Byron Murphy is going to be a stud in the NFL. He is going to be lights out. He's had flashes during this training camp where he's gone to the QB, where he's beat the offensive lineman so bad that he basically had a free shot at the quarterback. And I haven't seen something like that since somebody like an Aaron Donald or something. And I'm hesitant to say he's going to be an Aaron Donald type or be a Hall of Famer or something like that. But what we're seeing right now and what he's doing, even if he doesn't get better than what it is, it's very promising that he's going to be a person on our team to make an impact on defense. Whether it's Hall of Fame status or whatever it is that's a far stretch before he's played an NFL down or anything like that. No matter what happens going forward, what I'm seeing right now is he is going to impact our defense. He is going to get to the quarterback. He is going to be a player that we can rely on day in and day out to perform. And then as a first-round pick going into his first training camp, what I have seen is he is going to be good. How good? We got to wait and see because he's never played an NFL down. But what we've seen so far is he's going to make big plays.
everybody talks about the Legion of Boom from the Seahawks. Sorry, not the Mariners. The Seahawks heyday. But you can't overlook the importance of the defensive line. When the Seahawks were really good, that defensive line had Cliff Averill, Michael Bennett. They were just wrecking things. I see Byron Murphy as a person who has the potential to be another one of those game wreckers who go in there and they can actually cause some havoc. Combine that with Uchenna Nuoso, a healthy Uchenna going forward, and that defensive line might be able to open some things up, make it easier for the linebackers, make it easier for the DBs, because that's what the defensive line did during the Seahawks' really good defensive era time period. So hopefully, I don't want to like crown Byron Murphy as that player who's going to do that, but he certainly has an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, Byron Murphy is, I mean, that's my go-to guy to watch game one. I kind of briefly talked about this last week. I mean, these offense and defensive lines are crucial for me. I really believe in Mike Mcdonald's philosophy of building from the trenches out on both sides of the ball. And Byron Murphy's no exception to that. I mean, I got to see him briefly over at Texas. I mainly got to see him in the game against UW, and he still held his own against us, even though they lost that game. But super excited about him. And then as far as the other side of the ball with Christian Haynes, 6'2", this guy's 318 pounds. So yeah, he's a mauler. And I know we got him in the third round, so I'm expecting more than I would out of like a fifth or sixth rounder. We got Russell Wilson in the third round, so hopefully he becomes the Russell Wilson of the offensive line. Regardless, super exciting for both guys, just because it's in the trenches, and that's why I love to watch football.